Zuri was a gentle soul, a bright light in the small village nestled between the rolling hills and dense forests. Her laughter, soft and sincere, once filled the air like birdsong at dawn. But life had not been kind to her these past months. Since the day her mother had passed, the warmth and love that once cradled her had vanished, replaced by coldness and shadows. The only family she now had was her stepmother, a woman whose heart seemed hardened by bitterness and cruelty. From the moment Zuri's mother was laid to rest beneath the ancient baobab tree, the stepmother's true nature emerged. She took control of the household with an iron will, her eyes sharp and unforgiving. Where once there had been gentle guidance and affection, Zuri found cold commands and harsh words. The stepmother's voice cut through the silence like a whip, leaving Zuri trembling in corners where no one would see her tears. The village folks whispered among themselves, wondering how a girl so kind and gentle could endure such hardship. They knew the stepmother's reputation. Her bitterness was as fierce as the midday sun, and her heart seemed impenetrable. Each day, Zuri awoke to the harsh clang of the metal bell, signaling the start of her chores and the beginning of another day under her stepmother's watchful eye. But the cruelest act was reserved for the mornings. Each dawn, Zuri was forced to eat ash for breakfast. Not the ashes of burnt wood used for warmth or cooking, but fine, dry ash scraped from the hearth, gritty, bitter, and choking. The stepmother would glare as she placed the small bowl before Zuri, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Eat," she would command, voice cold and sharp. "This is all you deserve." Zuri's stomach would twist in protest, but she dared not refuse. The ash scraped her throat and made her eyes water, but she swallowed silently, a small act of submission in a household ruled by fear. The stepmother watched closely, ensuring every grain was consumed, her eyes gleaming with a harsh satisfaction. It was a daily reminder of Zuri's lowly status in the home, a punishment meant to break her spirit. Despite the bitterness of the ash and the sting of her stepmother's harshness, Zuri's heart remained unbroken. She held on to memories of her mother's gentle touch and soft lullabies, clinging to the hope that one day things would change. Each grain of ash she swallowed was a silent prayer for strength and for a brighter tomorrow. The other children in the village, unaware of the full extent of Zuri's suffering, often saw her working tirelessly in the fields or fetching water from the river with a quiet dignity. Her hands, though small, moved with purpose, and her eyes held a resilience that spoke louder than words. But behind that quiet strength was a young girl who longed for kindness and love, a heart aching beneath the weight of her stepmother's cruelty. Zuri's stepmother was relentless. She forbade Zuri from playing with other children, insisting that her presence was a stain upon the household's honor. She mocked Zuri's worn clothes and tattered shoes, telling her she was worthless and unworthy of happiness. The stepmother's anger was unpredictable. One moment a sharp glance, the next a harsh word or a heavy sigh that seemed to fill the room with despair. Meals were meager and joyless, the ash breakfast a grim start to each day. Sometimes, when the stepmother's back was turned, Zuri would try to sneak a few wild berries or stolen fruit from the garden, savoring the sweetness like a rare treasure. These small acts of defiance were her quiet rebellion against the harsh world she was forced to live in. At night, when the household was silent and the moon cast silver shadows across the room, Zuri would lie awake, her thoughts drifting to a better life. She dreamed of fields blooming with flowers, of laughter ringing through open skies, and of a mother's embrace that would never fade. The ash, bitter and dry, seemed far away in those moments, replaced by a warmth that only hope could bring. Though the stepmother sought to break her, Zuri's spirit was a seed waiting to grow. The cruelty she endured was a harsh winter, but within her burned a quiet flame, one that would not be extinguished. She believed, deep down, that kindness would find her again, and that one day the ash forced upon her would tell a different story, one of forgiveness and healing. The villagers, while aware of the stepmother's harshness, often turned a blind eye, constrained by tradition and fear of interfering in household matters. Yet some whispered prayers for Zuri's safety, hoping that the girl's gentle nature would protect her from the darkness that sought to consume her. Little did they know, the very ash she was forced to eat held a secret, a spirit of its own, one that would soon reach out to her in a way that would change everything. For now Zuri endured. Each morning she faced the bowl of ash with quiet determination, swallowing not just the bitter grains but the pain, the loneliness, and the unspoken hopes of a girl who refused to be broken. Her story was just beginning, and though her path was shrouded in shadows, the light within her flickered steadily, waiting for the moment it would blaze into something unstoppable. Each day under her stepmother's rule was a trial that tested Zuri's spirit beyond measure. The early morning light barely pierced the cracks in the old wooden shutters before the harsh voice of the stepmother roused her from fitful sleep. There were no gentle awakenings here, only cold commands and biting words that left no room for rest or comfort. Zuri rose quietly, careful not to disturb the heavy silence of the household, knowing that any misstep could bring swift punishment. From the moment her bare feet touched the cold, cracked floor, her chores began. She swept the dirt-streaked floors with a worn broom, her movements methodical despite the ache in her muscles. The stepmother watched over her like a hawk, ready to find fault in even the smallest task. If a speck of dust remained, a crease in her worn clothing, or a slight delay in her duties, Zuri would feel the sting of sharp words or a reprimanding glare. Meals were never a respite. The kitchen was a place of constant tension, where Zuri was given the smallest scraps, often cold and barely enough to fill her belly. The other servants ate their fill, while she was left to nibble on stale bread or the bitter ash that marked her place in the household. The stepmother's cruelty extended beyond mere neglect. It was a deliberate effort to remind Zuri of her lowly position. "You eat like a beggar," the stepmother sneered one day, tossing a piece of dry bread in her direction. "You deserve nothing more." Humiliation was a constant companion. At gatherings or when visitors came to the house, Zuri was hidden away, told to stay out of sight. If she dared to speak or appear without invitation, the stepmother's sharp rebuke would silence her. "You are a shadow here," she'd say coldly. "Invisible and unworthy." Such words were like chains, binding Zuri to a place where her voice was unheard and her presence unwanted. Isolation weighed heavily on her young heart. Without friends or allies within the household, Zuri spent long hours alone, outside in the overgrown garden, beneath the wide sky, or tucked into corners where she could find a moment's peace. She longed for companionship, for the simple joy of laughter shared with another child, but the stepmother's strict orders forbade such connections. "You belong to this house alone," she'd say. "No one will want you." Yet despite the neglect and cruelty, Zuri's spirit remained unbroken. She found solace in small things: a stray bird's song at dawn, the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze, the distant laughter of children playing beyond the village. These moments reminded her that the world was larger and kinder than the prison her stepmother had built around her. In her isolation, Zuri discovered a quiet resilience. She began to speak to the ash she was forced to eat, whispering her hopes and fears into the grains. Though it seemed strange, this secret connection gave her strength. The ash became a confidant, a silent witness to her suffering and a bearer of the quiet magic that lingered beneath her harsh reality. The villagers, though aware of Zuri's plight, were powerless to intervene openly. Many feared the stepmother's wrath or the social consequences of challenging tradition. But a few kind souls offered discreet kindness: a basket of fresh fruit left at the doorstep, a warm smile exchanged in passing, a whispered prayer for the girl's safety. These small acts were beacons of hope that pierced the gloom of Zuri's daily life. School was a distant dream. Unlike other children her age, Zuri had no time for learning or play. Her days were consumed by endless tasks: fetching water from the river, tending to the firewood, mending worn clothes, and cleaning the dirted floors. Yet even in this relentless labor she maintained a quiet dignity. Her hands moved with purpose, and her eyes held a quiet flame that refused to be extinguished. At night, exhaustion would claim her body, but her mind remained restless. She would lie awake in the cold, dark room assigned to her, a small, bare space near the kitchen, far from the warmth and comfort of the family quarters. There, in the silence, she would dream of a life where kindness replaced cruelty, where her worth was recognized, and where she could laugh freely without fear. The stepmother's cruelty was not just physical but emotional, a slow erosion of hope meant to break Zuri's will. Yet with each harsh word and every act of neglect, Zuri grew stronger in ways her oppressors could not see. She learned to guard her heart, to find strength in silence, and to nurture the flickering light of hope that burned deep within. Zuri's resilience became a quiet rebellion. Though the world tried to convince her she was worthless, she held on to the belief that her life mattered. She dreamed of a future where she would no longer be forced to eat ash for breakfast, where her spirit could soar beyond the walls of the household that sought to confine her. In those darkest moments, when loneliness threatened to consume her, Zuri clung to the small wonders around her: the steady rhythm of the seasons, the steadfastness of the ancient trees, and the mysterious ash that had become both her burden and her companion. These were the threads that wove a tapestry of strength and hope, a foundation upon which she would one day build a life far removed from cruelty and despair. Though her body was confined by harsh circumstances, Zuri's spirit remained free, a beacon of light in a world too often shadowed by cruelty. Her story was not one of defeat but of enduring courage, a testament to the strength that lies within those who refuse to be broken, even when the world tries its hardest to do so. The ash that Zuri was forced to eat each morning was not the ordinary residue of burnt wood or dried leaves as it appeared to others. Beneath its dull gray surface lay a secret, a hidden essence, ancient and alive with quiet magic that whispered through the grains like the faint murmur of forgotten spirits. It was this secret that began to stir within Zuri, awakening in her a connection that neither she nor anyone else in the village could have foreseen. At first, the ash seemed nothing more than a bitter punishment, a reminder of her lowly status and the cruelty of her stepmother. But slowly, as days turned into weeks, subtle signs began to reveal themselves. When Zuri swallowed the gritty powder, a strange warmth would spread through her chest, like a soft ember glowing beneath her skin. Her dreams grew more vivid, filled with images and voices she could not explain, whispers of ancestors long past, calls from the spirit world that beckoned with both warning and comfort. The villagers often spoke of the forest as a place where the veil between worlds was thin, where spirits roamed and ancient magic lingered. Zuri had heard the stories but never imagined that something so ordinary as the ash could carry such power. Yet, as she continued to eat it, the ash seemed to respond to her very presence, shifting in subtle ways, a shimmer when caught in the morning sun, a faint pulse beneath her fingertips. One morning, after a restless night filled with strange visions, Zuri noticed the ash behaving differently. As she reached for her usual bowl, a soft voice seemed to rise from the grains themselves. It was a whisper, barely audible yet unmistakably real. "Do not fear," it said. "We are with you." Startled, Zuri pulled back, heart pounding. Was it her imagination or was the ash truly alive? Curiosity overcame her fear. She touched the ash gently and warmth spread through her fingers, calming and soothing. The voice returned, this time clearer, telling stories of forgiveness, healing, and the power that dwelled within the very earth beneath their feet. The ash was not mere refuse but a vessel carrying the spirits of those wronged and forgotten, seeking peace and redemption. Zuri's awareness deepened with each passing day. She began to listen more closely to the whispers carried on the wind, to the quiet rustling of leaves, and to the pulse of life that seemed to connect everything around her. The ash became her secret ally, a source of strength amid the harshness of her daily life. Her dreams took on new meaning. She saw visions of her ancestors, wise and kind, urging her to be brave and to hold on to her spirit. They showed her paths through darkness, guiding her with symbols and signs that only she could understand. The ash, it seemed, was a bridge, linking her to a world beyond suffering and cruelty, a world where justice and forgiveness could take root. But this connection was both a blessing and a burden. As Zuri grew closer to the ash's power, she felt the weight of its history, the pain of those spirits bound to it, their stories etched in every grain. She understood that her role was not just to endure but to carry their voices forward, to be a vessel for healing and change. The stepmother remained unaware of this growing bond. To her, the ash was simply a tool of punishment, a way to remind Zuri of her place. But the magic within it was beyond her grasp, a secret force quietly nurturing a spark of hope and resilience within the girl she sought to break. In quiet moments, when the house was still and the world outside faded away, Zuri would sit with the ash, listening to its soft murmurs and feeling the pulse of its ancient power. She learned to draw strength from it, to find comfort in its presence, and to believe that even in the darkest circumstances, there was a light waiting to be kindled. This mysterious origin of the ash marked a turning point in Zuri's journey. It was no longer simply a symbol of suffering but a source of transformation, a reminder that within pain could lie the seeds of forgiveness, and within hardship, the power to change one's destiny. As the bond between Zuri and the ash grew, so too did her understanding of the world's hidden depths. She began to see beyond the surface of cruelty and injustice, recognizing the spiritual threads that connected all living things. The ash was a whisper from the past, a call to the future, and a promise that even the humblest among them could carry the power to heal and forgive. And so, with the ash by her side, Zuri faced each new day with quiet determination. Though her body endured hardship, her spirit was awakening to a greater purpose, one that would not only change her own life but ripple through the village, transforming hearts and minds in ways no one could yet imagine. The morning light filtered weakly through the cracked window panes of the small, dim kitchen where Zuri sat before her usual bowl of ash. The air was still, heavy with the scent of smoke and wood, and the silence was broken only by the soft crackling of embers from the hearth. As usual, the stepmother had placed the bowl before her without a word, her cold eyes watching to ensure Zuri would obey without hesitation. Zuri's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the bowl. The ash looked as dull and lifeless as ever, gray, powdery, bitter to the taste. But as her fingers brushed the surface, something shifted. A faint warmth pulsed beneath her touch, like the heartbeat of something unseen. Her breath caught and she froze, staring at the bowl in confusion. Then, almost imperceptibly, a soft voice drifted from the ash. It was gentle, trembling, filled with sorrow and regret. "Forgive us, please forgive us," it whispered, barely louder than the wind through the trees. Zuri's heart pounded as she blinked, unsure if the voice was real or a trick of her weary mind. The stepmother's gaze sharpened. "Eat," she commanded harshly. But Zuri could not move. The voice called again, more urgent this time, wrapping around her like a tender plea. "Forgive us for what we have done. Forgive us for the pain we caused you." Tears welled in Zuri's eyes. She lowered her hands slowly, her fingers grazing the ash with reverence. The voice seemed to come from deep within the grains, a chorus of spirits trapped in the dust, yearning for release and peace. A swell of emotions rose within her: fear, wonder, confusion, and something like hope. The kitchen walls felt as if they were closing in, yet the warmth from the ash spread through her like a comforting embrace. For the first time, the ash was not merely a punishment but a presence, a living memory seeking redemption. Zuri's lips trembled as she whispered, "Who are you? Why do you ask for forgiveness?" The voice responded, faint but clear, telling stories of those who had been wronged, of ancient curses and forgotten promises. The ash carried the weight of generations, and in its sorrow, it reached out to her, the girl who had suffered much but had not lost her heart. Her stepmother's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but Zuri no longer felt alone. The ash's plea stirred something deep inside her, awakening a connection that transcended pain. She understood then that forgiveness was not just something she needed to give but something intertwined with the spirits bound to the ash itself. That morning marked the beginning of a new chapter, a silent covenant between Zuri and the ash. With trembling hands and a heart wide open, she vowed to listen, to understand, and to carry the voices of the past toward healing and peace. The ash was no longer a symbol of cruelty but a bridge to a destiny she had yet to fully comprehend. Each day that dawned, the bond between Zuri and the ash deepened quietly but powerfully. Though to the world around her, the ash remained a bitter punishment, to Zuri it had become a secret companion, a source of unexpected comfort and guidance through the loneliness and cruelty she endured. This mysterious connection grew like a delicate thread woven through her daily life, unseen by others but steady and unbreakable. In the quiet moments before the household awoke, Zuri would sit by the hearth, her fingers gently sifting through the fine ash. The grains shimmered faintly in the pale morning light, as if alive with a hidden energy. She listened closely, attuned to the soft whispers that seemed to rise from the ashes like echoes of a distant song. The voices were tender, sometimes sorrowful, sometimes filled with gentle encouragement. "Hold on," they seemed to say. "You are not alone." The ash's presence soothed Zuri's weary heart. When her stepmother's cruel words cut deep, when her chores felt endless and her body ached from exhaustion, the ash whispered strength and resilience. It reminded her of the power she carried within, even if no one else could see it. In moments of doubt and fear, Zuri found a sanctuary in the ash's soft murmurs, a quiet assurance that beyond the harshness of her world, something kinder and more profound awaited. The bond was not merely emotional but spiritual. Sometimes as she closed her eyes, Zuri felt the ash's warmth spread through her body, calming her restless mind and easing her pain. The whispers carried ancient wisdom, stories of forgiveness, healing, and the cycles of life that intertwined all beings. Through these secret conversations, Zuri began to understand that the ash was not a curse but a gift, a link to the ancestors and spirits who had once walked the earth, whose strength now flowed into her. At night, when the house was silent and the stars blanketed the sky, Zuri's dreams became vivid and meaningful. The ash guided her through visions of the past and glimpses of the future. She saw images of herself standing tall, no longer bound by cruelty but surrounded by light and love. The spirits within the ash showed her paths to courage and kindness, teaching her that forgiveness was a powerful force, one that could heal wounds and transform even the darkest of hearts. Despite the stepmother's harsh control, Zuri found moments of quiet rebellion through her bond with the ash. When tasked with impossible chores or faced with humiliations, she would silently call upon the ash's strength, drawing from its ancient energy. It was as if the ash whispered a promise, that no matter how heavy her burden, she was stronger than it appeared. This secret relationship also brought moments of wonder. One afternoon, as Zuri gathered firewood at the edge of the forest, she noticed the ash shimmering in the sunlight, releasing tiny motes of light that danced like fireflies. She reached out hesitantly and a warm breeze brushed past her, carrying the faintest scent of jasmine and earth, a fragrance that felt both comforting and sacred. The ash was alive, connected to the very soul of the land and the spirits who protected it. Zuri's bond with the ash began to ripple outward, touching those few who showed her kindness. Malika, the village healer, noticed a quiet change in Zuri's demeanor, a strength and calm that seemed to glow beneath her fragile exterior. When Zuri shared fragments of her experience, Malika listened with awe, recognizing the ancient magic at work. Together they pondered the ash's power, wondering what destiny awaited the girl who carried such a sacred gift. Even Juma, the young guard who had once watched over Zuri, sensed something special about her. He observed how she carried herself with newfound grace, as if protected by an invisible shield. Though he did not understand the mysteries of the ash, he vowed to stand by her side, guarding her from harm and believing in the strength she did not always show. Yet the bond was not without its challenges. The stepmother's suspicion grew with each passing day, her eyes narrowing as she watched Zuri's quiet moments and sensed a force she could not control. The stepmother's cruelty intensified, driven by fear and jealousy, but the ash's whispers remained a steady beacon for Zuri, helping her withstand the storms. In this secret dance between girl and ash, a powerful transformation began. Zuri was no longer just a victim of cruelty, she was becoming a guardian of ancient wisdom, a bearer of a gift that transcended pain and suffering. The ash was her ally, her teacher, and her comforter, a silent presence that breathed life into her weary soul. Through their bond, Zuri learned that strength could be found in unexpected places, and that even the smallest, most overlooked things, like a handful of ash, could carry the weight of history, hope, and healing. The ash's gentle power was a reminder that within every hardship lay the potential for growth, and within every heartache, the seed of forgiveness. As days turned to weeks, Zuri embraced her secret connection with quiet courage. The ash had become a part of her story, a living symbol of resilience and the unbreakable spirit that would one day change not only her life but the lives of those around her. In the face of cruelty, she found a sanctuary. In the ashes of despair, she discovered the spark of hope. The stepmother's eyes had always been sharp, but in recent days they grew colder, sharper still, as a dark suspicion took root deep within her heart. She could sense it, something unusual stirring around Zuri, something that defied the lowly place she had forced the girl to occupy. The subtle changes in Zuri's demeanor did not escape her notice. The quiet strength in her gaze, the calm resilience beneath the weight of hardship, and most unsettling of all, the whispered words Zuri seemed to murmur when she thought no one was listening. At first, the stepmother dismissed it as a trick of the mind, a child's attempt to find comfort in loneliness. But the ash, the very ash she used to punish Zuri, was beginning to seem less like a tool of torment and more like a mysterious presence linking itself to her stepdaughter. She caught Zuri's fingers lingering over the bowl longer than necessary, saw the faint shimmer in the ash's dull surface when the morning light struck it just right, and felt an eerie warmth that seemed to surround the girl whenever she was near. Jealousy began to gnaw at the stepmother's heart like a persistent rat. How could this girl, whom she had tried so hard to break, harbor such strength? What invisible force shielded Zuri from despair and seemed to whisper hope even in the darkest moments? These questions festered, fueling her bitterness and fear. Her cruelty deepened, no longer content with mere neglect or harsh words. She found new ways to torment Zuri, her punishments harsher and more relentless. She deprived her of even the meager comforts she once allowed, snatching away scraps of food, denying her warmth by coldly extinguishing the fire in the hearth, and isolating her further from the household. One morning, after Zuri lingered too long by the ash bowl, the stepmother's fury ignited like a sudden storm. "You mock me," she hissed, slapping the bowl from Zuri's hands. The ash scattered across the floor, dust rising like ghostly whispers. "What is this nonsense? Are you speaking to ashes now? Do you think yourself better than your place?" Zuri's eyes filled with tears, but she held her head high. "No, I only listen," she whispered, the voice steady despite the pain. "The ash speaks of forgiveness and healing." The stepmother's laugh was cold and bitter. "Forgiveness? Healing? You are a servant girl and nothing more. Your dreams and whispers mean nothing here." But her words could not erase the growing fear within her. That night, she lay awake, haunted by visions of the ash glowing in Zuri's hands and the girl's quiet defiance. The house felt colder, darker, as if the walls themselves whispered secrets she was not meant to hear. Driven by suspicion, the stepmother began to watch Zuri more closely, scrutinizing her every move. She forbade her from leaving the kitchen area, barred her from the garden where Zuri once found fleeting moments of peace, and ordered the other servants to avoid any interaction with her. The stepmother's paranoia spread like wildfire through the household, turning even the kindest servants wary and distant. Rumors swirled among the village about the strange changes in the household. Some whispered that the stepmother was cursed, her heart poisoned by jealousy and fear. Others believed Zuri was blessed by the spirits, protected by ancient magic that the stepmother could not understand or control. The stepmother's cruelty became sharper still, fueled by desperation to reclaim control. One evening, in a burst of rage, she accused Zuri of witchcraft, threatening her with punishment far worse than before. "You think the spirits speak only to you? You will learn what it means to defy me." Yet, despite the growing hostility, Zuri's spirit remained steadfast. The ash's whispers grew stronger, wrapping around her like a shield against the storm. The bond between girl and ash became a source of courage, a quiet rebellion that no cruelty could extinguish. The stepmother's jealousy was a wildfire consuming everything it touched, but in its path, it revealed the true strength of the girl she sought to break. The more she tried to silence Zuri, the louder the ash's voice became in the girl's heart, a promise that no darkness, no matter how fierce, could snuff out the light within. As tension simmered beneath the surface of the household, the stepmother's suspicion and cruelty set the stage for a reckoning that would challenge not only her power but the very fate of Zuri and the ancient magic that flowed through her veins. Despite the relentless cruelty and suspicion cast upon her, Zuri's courage never faltered. Each day she faced her hardships with a quiet strength born from a heart untainted by bitterness or hatred. Her kindness was a light in the dark corners of the household, a gentle presence that even her stepmother's harshness could not completely overshadow. This kindness, combined with the mysterious blessing of the ash, began to weave a new destiny for Zuri, one that would ripple through the village and change the course of many lives. Though her stepmother sought to isolate her, Zuri found ways to touch the hearts of those around her. She spoke softly to the children who dared to approach, offering them a smile that warmed even the coldest days. She tended the sick animals in the village with gentle hands, her compassion evident in every touch. Her patience was endless. Even when scorned or punished, she did not respond with anger but with quiet understanding, as if her spirit was buoyed by a strength beyond the ordinary. The ash's spiritual power was at the core of this transformation. It whispered courage into her heart when fear threatened to overwhelm, and it softened the sting of pain with an unseen warmth. In moments of despair, Zuri would close her eyes and feel the ash's blessing flow through her, filling her with hope and resilience. This invisible force shielded her from the stepmother's harshest blows and nourished the gentle flame within her soul. Word of Zuri's quiet bravery began to spread through the village. Neighbors who once pitied her suffering now looked upon her with respect and admiration. They saw not a broken girl, but a young woman who bore her trials with grace and dignity. Some villagers brought her small gifts, wildflowers, fresh fruit, or warm blankets, offering these tokens of kindness and silent solidarity. These gestures, though simple, were profound. They were seeds of change sown in a soil long hardened by cruelty. Malika, the village healer, became one of Zuri's most steadfast supporters. Recognizing the ancient magic intertwined with the ash and Zuri's spirit, Malika began to teach her about herbs, healing rituals, and the ways of the spirits. Their secret meetings in the forest were moments of light and learning, where Zuri's knowledge grew, and her connection to the ash deepened. Malika's faith in Zuri's destiny gave the girl renewed purpose and confidence. Even the young guard, Juma, who had once merely watched from a distance, found himself drawn to Zuri's strength. He became her silent protector, warding off the stepmother's harsher punishments and standing watch during the coldest nights. Juma's quiet loyalty was a balm to Zuri's weary heart, a reminder that she was not truly alone in her struggle. Zuri's kindness extended beyond those she knew. One day she found a wounded bird near the riverbank, its wing broken and fragile. Gently she cradled the creature and whispered soothing words, the ash's blessing flowing through her fingertips. The bird's spirit seemed to respond, its eyes shining with gratitude before it fluttered away, healed and free. This small miracle echoed the greater healing beginning to take root within Zuri's own life. Her patience was tested time and again, but Zuri never wavered. When the stepmother's cruelty intensified, she met it not with resistance but with an open heart. In the face of scorn and punishment, Zuri's silence was a statement of strength. The ash's whispers filled her with peace, reminding her that true power lay not in vengeance but in forgiveness and grace. As the days passed, the household began to shift. The servants, once fearful and distant, started to see Zuri differently. They admired her resilience and were inspired by the calm light she carried despite adversity. Some offered her quiet smiles or soft words of encouragement when the stepmother was not watching. The stepmother's reign of cruelty, though fierce, began to lose its grip as Zuri's spirit grew stronger and more radiant. The Ash's blessing was not just a source of strength but a catalyst for change. It awakened a spiritual energy in Zuri that transcended her circumstances. This energy seemed to ripple outward, touching the hearts of those around her and inspiring a slow but steady transformation. The village, long shadowed by fear and sorrow, began to glimpse the possibility of hope through the girl who ate ash yet blossomed like a flower in the desert. Zuri herself felt this change deeply. She no longer saw the ash as a symbol of punishment but as a sacred gift, a reminder of the strength hidden within pain and the power of forgiveness. Each morning, as she ate the ash, she whispered prayers for healing and peace, not only for herself but for the stepmother who had caused her suffering. This act of compassion was a profound rebellion, a refusal to be chained by anger or despair. In the quiet corners of the village, stories of Zuri's courage and the ash's mysterious power began to take root in the hearts of the people. They spoke of a girl who had endured the harshest trials yet remained unbroken, whose kindness and patience had turned a symbol of cruelty into a source of blessing. These stories spread like wildfire, a beacon of hope in a world often darkened by hardship. Zuri's journey was far from over, but with each step she moved closer to the destiny whispered to her by the ash, the destiny of healing, forgiveness, and renewal. Her courage, nurtured by the ash's blessing, was a testament to the unyielding strength of the human spirit and the transformative power of kindness in the face of cruelty. And so, with a heart full of hope and a spirit glowing with ancient magic, Zuri faced each new day, knowing that the path ahead, though uncertain, was illuminated by the light she carried within, a light born from the ashes but destined to shine far beyond them. The tension in the household had been simmering for weeks, a heavy fog of suspicion and fear hanging thick between Zuri and her stepmother. The stepmother's cruelty had reached a new peak, her eyes blazing with jealousy and rage whenever she caught sight of Zuri's quiet strength. But beneath that fury lay a growing unease, a gnawing dread that the mysterious power surrounding the ash was something far beyond her control. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with streaks of crimson and gold, the stepmother found Zuri sitting by the hearth, her fingers delicately sifting through the bowl of ash. The soft light caught the dust in a shimmer, and the room seemed to hum with a strange energy. Unable to contain her wrath any longer, the stepmother stormed into the room, voice sharp as a blade. "Enough of this nonsense," she snapped, grabbing the bowl from Zuri's hands and scattering the ash across the floor. The dust rose like a cloud, swirling around them as if alive. "Tell me, what trickery is this? What power do you think you hold over this house?" Zuri met her stepmother's furious gaze steadily, her own eyes calm but filled with quiet strength. "The ash is not what you think," she said softly. "It carries the spirits of those who were wronged, those who seek forgiveness and peace. It is a blessing, not a curse." The stepmother laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "Blessing? Forgiveness? You speak of spirits and magic, but all I see is a servant who defies her place. I have given you everything, and you repay me with insolence." As the words left her lips, the ash on the floor began to glow faintly, a soft, pulsating light that illuminated the room with an otherworldly glow. The stepmother's eyes widened in fear and disbelief. The air thickened, charged with an unseen force that pressed heavily against her chest. Suddenly, the whispers from the ash rose in a chorus, voices ancient and sorrowful, speaking truths long buried. "Face what you have done," they murmured. "Seek forgiveness for the pain you caused." The stepmother staggered back, clutching at her chest as the weight of her misdeeds seemed to press upon her. Memories flooded her mind, times she had scorned Zuri, denied her kindness, and let jealousy consume her heart. The spirits revealed the darkness she had hidden even from herself. Tears welled in the stepmother's eyes, her harsh facade crumbling as guilt and sorrow broke through. "I was wrong," she whispered, voice trembling. "I let my anger blind me. Forgive me, Zuri." Zuri rose and stepped forward, the ash's warm glow surrounding her like a protective light. "Forgiveness is the first step," she said gently. "But change must follow." The room seemed to breathe with a new energy, the heavy shadows lifting as understanding dawned between them. The stepmother fell to her knees, humbled and repentant, while Zuri extended her hand, not in anger but in compassion. From that moment the household began to heal. The ash's true nature was no longer a secret but a symbol of forgiveness and renewal. The stepmother's heart softened and she vowed to make amends, while Zuri's courage and kindness blossomed into a force that united rather than divided. The confrontation marked not an end but a new beginning, one where pain was transformed into healing, and where the power of forgiveness shone brighter than any darkness. The spirits within the ash, once burdened by sorrow, now whispered blessings of peace and hope, carried on the winds of a brighter tomorrow. The stepmother's transformation was neither sudden nor easy. It was a slow, painful journey, one that forced her to confront the darkest parts of her soul she had long buried beneath pride and anger. In the days following the confrontation with Zuri, the weight of the ash's revelation pressed heavily upon her, unraveling the armor of cruelty she had worn for so long. At first she tried to deny the stirring remorse that crept through her heart. She busied herself with household chores, avoiding the girl she had once tormented. But every time she caught a glimpse of Zuri, calm, dignified, and surrounded by a quiet light, her guilt gnawed at her, relentless and unforgiving. Nights became the hardest. Alone in the darkness, the stepmother wrestled with memories she had tried to forget, the laughter she had stolen, the kindness she had crushed beneath her harsh words and cold commands. The spirits within the ash seemed to whisper to her even then, their voices a haunting chorus urging her to seek forgiveness and change. One evening, unable to bear the weight any longer, the stepmother found herself at Zuri's door. Her hands trembled as she knocked softly, afraid yet desperate. When Zuri opened the door, surprised to see her stepmother standing there with tear-streaked cheeks and eyes filled with vulnerability, a quiet hope blossomed between them. "I have wronged you," the stepmother said, voice breaking. "I was blinded by jealousy and anger. You did not deserve my cruelty. Please forgive me." Zuri studied her stepmother's face, seeing the genuine sorrow reflected there. The long years of pain and hardship could not be erased overnight, but in that moment the seed of healing was planted. With grace and compassion, Zuri extended her hand. "Forgiveness is a path we walk together," she said softly. "Let us begin anew." From that day forward, the stepmother sought to make amends. She eased her harshness, offering kindness where there had been scorn, and humility where there had been pride. Slowly she earned the trust she had once shattered, learning that true strength lay not in domination but in love and respect. Their relationship, once fractured by cruelty, began to mend, thread by thread, moment by moment. The ash, which had once been a symbol of suffering, now glowed as a testament to redemption and the transformative power of forgiveness. Through this journey, the stepmother discovered that repentance was not weakness but courage, the courage to face one's faults and choose a better path. And in seeking forgiveness she found a freedom she had never known, the freedom to love and be loved in return. The moment Zuri chose forgiveness, a profound shift began to ripple through the village, quiet at first, like the gentle stirring of leaves before a breeze, then growing stronger until it swept through every heart and home. Her decision to forgive her stepmother was more than a personal act. It was a beacon of hope that illuminated the path toward healing and unity for all who had suffered under the weight of cruelty and division. Zuri's forgiveness was not given lightly. It was the culmination of years of pain, resilience, and spiritual awakening, a conscious choice to break the cycle of anger and retribution. When she extended her hand to her stepmother, it was an invitation to transformation, a sacred moment that transcended their troubled past. The stepmother, humbled and repentant, accepted with tears, and together they began to rebuild the fragile bridge between them. News of this reconciliation spread swiftly through the village, carried on the whispers of the wind and the joyful chatter of neighbors. People who had long held grudges or suffered in silence found courage in Zuri's example. The villagers, inspired by the healing between the two women, began to seek forgiveness in their own lives, mending broken friendships, easing old rivalries, and opening their hearts to one another. The ash that had once been a symbol of suffering now came to represent renewal and hope. At the center of the village, a ceremony was held to honor this transformation. The elders, once stern and unforgiving, joined hands with the youth, women, and men, all gathered beneath the great baobab tree whose roots had witnessed generations of joy and sorrow. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Zuri and her stepmother stood side by side. Together they sprinkled ash upon the earth, not as a punishment but as a blessing. The ash scattered on the ground seemed to sparkle with new life, a visible reminder that even the most painful trials could give rise to healing and unity. Songs rose into the evening air, celebrating forgiveness, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of community. The villagers danced, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves and the soft whispers of the spirits who had long watched over them. Children played freely, their faces alight with joy unburdened by past sorrows. Zuri's kindness and courage became woven into the fabric of village life. Her story was told and retold around fires and at gatherings, a timeless tale of how one person's forgiveness can ignite a light that dispels darkness. The villagers learned that healing was not a solitary journey but a shared path, one that required openness, humility, and the willingness to embrace change. The stepmother, once consumed by jealousy and cruelty, blossomed into a figure of humility and care. She dedicated herself to acts of kindness, working alongside Zuri to help those in need and restore harmony within the village. Their bond grew stronger, a living testament to the power of forgiveness to transform even the deepest wounds. With each passing season, the village flourished anew. Crops grew richer, the laughter of children echoed through the fields, and the once heavy air was light with hope and possibility. The ash remained a sacred symbol, a reminder that pain and hardship, when met with courage and compassion, could become the very soil from which healing springs. Zuri's forgiveness had done more than heal a broken relationship. It had sown the seeds of a more compassionate, united community. The village learned that forgiveness is not forgetting or excusing wrongs but choosing to release the hold of bitterness and open the heart to renewal. In this way, the legacy of Zuri's journey endured, carried forward by generations who understood that even in the darkest moments, the light of forgiveness could shine brightest. The village became a place where wounds were mended, spirits lifted, and hope rekindled, a testament to the enduring power of love and the profound peace that comes when hearts dare to forgive.